Hello and welcome back to the Tavern. In here, we are talking to friends about creating, about crafting about showing off their craft, and then, of course, how this can be promoted to the audience. Tonight, we are starting a new section, and this is going to be broken down into three parts. And in order to do so, we want the audience to really get involved with the story itself. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to tell about our adventurer. We're going to talk about him. We're going to find out who he is, where he comes from, how he arrived at the tavern, maybe, and you'll get that inspiration to maybe use in your game. During this time, we're also opening up our donation box. You can go onto our Twitch main page, and we're also going to drop the link in the channel where you can donate. And if we get $25 in donations, and we'll continue to let people know when that money's donated, when we hit that $25 mark, we're going to actually have our artist, Brina Luna, who does all of our artwork from Pots in Darkenhaven. She's going to create a portrait with the character of the week designed. And of course, at the end of the show, if you stick around until the end, or if you look at it later on the VOD on Twitch, you'll be able to pull up the chat history, and you'll be able to pull that information. If not, and it goes away in time, there's another way you can get a hold of that, and that is on our Patreon with the lowest tier. You'll be able to still jump in and grab all of the archives as people start to get their characters created. So, before we go anywhere, let me introduce you to Alec. And Alec is a TikTok cosplayer, all-around entertainment, amazing person. And who did you bring to the tavern tonight, Alec?
All right. I brought it's a Leonin, and his name is Agron Stormsong.
Stormsong.
Yes.
Okay. And where is Agron Stormsong coming from?
So he is a retired military general. He's in his gray years. He's done his duty for his country. And how did you know? My own Leonin has entered the room. He's a retired general. I would say so, and he's just kind of seeing the world now, through a lens that isn't war.
Lens that isn't war. That's fantastic. And what class is your Leonin?
My dog's hair is flying in front of the camera.
No worries.
I would say, he is a. I want to say fighter, but I'm gonna say paladin. I'm going to say paladin for the reason that because he's older, he was probably a fighter in his early days, but because he's older, he's probably found a bit of a religion. And so I'm going to lean towards paladin.
I'm guessing, can you repeat the name of the guy again?
Agron Stormsong.
Agron. So Agron, I'm guessing he's not rocking around in his full garb anymore as a retired person. So what does Agron look like right now?
So
walking into the tavern,
he's probably in a little bit more of a relaxed get-up. I would say he's in his traveling clothes. So he's very tall. Hello, I see you. And I would say he's got like a long, not leather duster, but just like a long jacket with a red scarf wrapped around his neck. I would say some like fairly nice, not beaten up too much, like slacks. And he doesn't wield a weapon, so he's not going to have any weapon on him whatsoever. And his mane is a little graying around the whiskers and around the back of it. Yeah.
Sounds like Agron is, he's time to just, he's relaxing. And just because you brought him up and this is a retired character. What was your inspiration for Agron?
My inspiration for Agron is I'm always interested in the idea of like what your character does after the game's over with. You know what I mean? When
Mhm.
when the bad, yes, I hear you. When the bad guy has been defeated, when, you know, the world is safe, you know, what's next, you know? And I think the idea, that's my bear. I'm going to kick her out of my room 1 second.
You're good. Hope people are enjoying Egron and the story that we're going to hear about him. In the meantime, while we're waiting on that, of course, like I said, please, if you want to see Egron come to life, it's going to be a very small amount of money, but it is going to, and all of the money, mind you, is going to go to our artist. None of the money is going to go back to the Misfits. It's going straight to our artist so that she can take care of these amazing adventures that we're going to develop through hopefully the next year. So what does Egron drink? Does he drink?
He does. Probably not as much as he used to because he's in his yesteryears, you know. So he probably drinks. Again, he was a general, so he was kind of used to this higher level of culture, but he never really gelled with it. So I'd say probably just like the draft ale that the tavern has.
Nice. So yeah, as Egron comes in, you can see him kind of leaning one arm against the table. He asks for the common rather than looking for something that's more expensive. And the tavern owner immediately gets him what he needs, not expecting much. And I'm sure Egron, being at the level that he's at, doesn't just pay either. He overpays, I'm guessing. Correct?
Yes, 100%. Yes. Tips too much.
Right. So as people, as we start to create these characters, and you have and the audience starts coming in, if you have questions about Egron or the other characters that are being developed, please make sure you're throwing those up in the chat so we can continue to delve into those. So Egron sounds so much fun. He sounds like one of those characters that you would use as, you know, he's the next lead. Maybe it's something that he's heard around the town, or maybe it's a story he's telling that would lead a younger set of adventurers to go find something. I love those characters that have that long history to them rather than having the short, you know, because as an adventurer, when you're starting at level 1, you shouldn't have a giant, you know, a history to you to the point where you got years and years and years and years of experience, unless something, of course, has happened. Or I guess like some people, even myself included, it took you a few years to get to that point where you found out what you wanted to do, right?
Right.
What made you do that? But I'm guessing this one he'd be a higher level, and he's now retiring, and, you know, no longer does he want to risk his life every day for gold, glory, and in this case, it sounds like his country. Right. So, no, man, this is fun, because not only is this going to help with, hopefully other people are going to take these characters and they're going to use them in their own games, but the inspiration behind some of the characters that are going to come on this show, I'm super excited about.
Yeah, it'll be super cool to create kind of a peanut gallery of characters to pull from.
Yeah, and hopefully at the end of the year, you know, maybe we can do a finale rally, and if our wonderful artist would have the energy to do so, and put like a portrait together of all the characters. You know?
That would be super cool.
It'd be really cool. Ideas, we'll see. So as we continue to transition out, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. So specifically, I am by day, by trade, I am a professional ballroom dancer. That's what I do normally. I work for Fred Astaire, as well as I manage 2 studios marketing here in Wisconsin. So that's like my day job. That's what I do when I'm not making content. And then I started making content back during COVID, like most people, because my dance studio, at the time I was an instructor. Now I'm a manager, but at the time I was an instructor, and our studio was closed, and we were closed for longer than most businesses because we were classified as sort of like a gym. And so those businesses were closed for a while. So just out of sheer boredom, because my friends and I were playing D&D. We normally played every Sunday, but we couldn't
Right.
anymore because of COVID. So we started playing virtually, and then I just was like, my roommate convinced me to get on TikTok against my will, and I just started making content, and it kind of grew from there to where it is today, and that was 2 years ago. I'm an actor I went to school for acting, and then I transitioned into ballroom dancing. And so I kind of use everything that I've learned, and I taught myself how to do everything over COVID, and that's where I am now, like making content.
Awesome. So where did you go to school at?
I went to UW Milwaukee.
Okay.
Yeah, so I went in for their BFA acting program that's there.
How long did you ever have you ever done acting, or has it mostly been dancing at this point?
So from the time I figured out I was bad at sports when I was a kid, all the way to when did I start at Fred's? Fred Astaire. I started in 2017. So from the time I was, maybe like 8 or 9 to the time I was 22, I think I was acting.
Yeah.
So I was in local theater. I was doing, some touring stuff, all the way through middle school into high school into college. I did the program. And then even for years afterwards, I had started my own theater company with friends of mine.
Wow.
And I was trapped into the Fred Astaire job. I had lost my job that I was working at the time. And my friend, who was already working for Fred's, invited me out for drinks with his Fred Astaire friends. And I was like, they sound weird, but I'll go. And it was really a plot to get me to come in for a job interview the next day. And I've been with the company ever since.
Well, it sounds like what the plot was worked, because
it did.
Like
it did.
Got hooked.
They bought me a couple drinks and some food, and like, hey, come by the studio tomorrow. It'll be great.
And you're like, and I don't know the value of, or the cost of what it would take to be doing stuff like that on a full-time basis. So I don't know if Fred Astaire was a lot better of a better money and things like that.
Oh, much better. Much better. Because as much as I love Wisconsin, I love where I'm from. The professional theater scene, to get paid for acting, is a very, 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 very like sparse market, right? Most of the things around here are community theater. And so when I got the job at Fred's and I could see that I got paid to use my degree, and I got, insurance, and I got, 401k, all that stuff, I was like, oh, this is great. I still get to perform, I get to teach, and I get paid for it. So it worked out really well.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. Hopefully it's been an amazing experience for you, and it sounds like it's been pretty lucrative. You went from, it sounds like you started as a dancer and then instructor, and now in a management position. Mm-hmm. So what is, for somebody who's not been in theater, because I never did theater, I wish I would have. It's like the one few things that I was kind of like, man.
You can start at any time.
You're right. I actually can.
You can start at any time.
When I have time to do so, I will. I've actually looked into it a couple different ways. However, sadly, my time limit is very low at the moment. So
I always say to my friends, if there is something you want to do, you'll never find the time. You have to make time.
Yeah, no, you're right. And kind of that's what D&D happened for me, because same thing, I decided to, and my wife was the one that pushed me, truthfully. We had run a weekly game at my table here at the house for almost 2 years. And then of course, COVID hits. Mm-hmm. The whole world has to change, because I can't play at the table anymore. And I didn't know what I didn't know what else to do. So I had to start buying things that I had normally not bought, like, virtual tabletops and maps and subscriptions. And I'm like, man, this is getting expensive. And my wife looked at me and she goes, hey, this is starting to hit the normal funding, not like your play fund, the normal fund. I was like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. I said, I'm going to have to shut a game down or find a way to make money off of this. And that little blip is exactly what taught me. I was like, can I make money off of this? and that's when I went into professional game mastering on, started out at startplaying.games, and then I opened up shortly after two games under my own organization known as the DM Grumpy Dwarf. And that is where, that's when the Misfits kicked off. And it was like just one thing after another. And now I'm like, what do I have time to do now? Because I'm doing all this stuff. But passion is a lot of fun. And really it's what's driven me to get to where we're at as a group. And I can't state that I've done this alone. With the one thing amazing about D&D is you can't do it alone. You can't. No, it's impossible. You can't. As a game master, if I'm sitting here by myself, guess what I'm doing? I'm writing a book. I'm not playing.
Exactly.
So, to me, it's very interesting that we found a group of like-minded individuals to come together and say, okay, we're going to start the Misfits, and it's been a fun ride, that's for sure. So, back to your conversation, or actually, let's go back to your acting career. So what have you used what has helped you that you learned in acting that you can bring to the D&D table?
So I would say mainly a couple of things. I would say a handful of things. So number one is the voice training. I had basically 2 years in college, but then also I had acting lessons throughout my childhood where it was like voice acting, and voice training and stuff like that. So to do goofy voices, to do accents, those types of things. But the most beneficial, I would probably say, is the improv, the improv experience, because this game. It's you'll have this beautiful plot, this beautiful plan, and then your players just pick the one thing that you didn't plan for, and then you have to come up with an entirely new plot.
Improvisation the rest of the 2 hours of the game.
Yep. So I would say the voice stuff, and then the improv skills. I've always been I was a middle child, so I always enjoyed being in front of people. So the acting, that was kind of helpful, but I was already kind of putting myself in front of people, so that was kind of already there. But I would say more so the improvising was the main thing.
Yeah, I wish, like I said, I was not that type of child, and it took me many years after high school to be. Actually, it took me going to college when I said, you know what, I have to reinvent myself, because I left the area, I didn't know anybody, and I was like, I'm not going to be that kid that just sits in the corner and doesn't talk to anybody. So it took me just getting out there and doing it, and now I do this a couple days a week on a stream.
Bada big, bada boom.
So it kind of changed things, right? That's awesome, and that sounds like a lot of experience that you can bring to the table, especially being able to get into the shoes of characters and things like that. Let's see, what else? So you've done acting for many, many years.
Mm-hmm.
You've now done since 2017, you've been, dancing, mm-hmm. as a professional ballroom dancer. Where are you at now within the TTRPG community then? It sounds like you're busy.
Yeah. I mean, so where I am now is kind of in I would say like a in-between position. You know what I mean? I built, my bread and butter was TikTok for 2 years, essentially. And, and I started the Worlds Guild, the Twitch channel that I managed because of the people that I met, and so I built kind of this, community of friends and everything around me. And I've taken my lumps and learned a lot. And so where I am at now is kind of refining everything down, and the reality of the thing is that, you're right. This takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
And, as I've gotten, older, it's like I have things I have a wedding to pay for next year. I have a house, I have dogs. I have all these things I have to take care of. And I can't devote just, unlimited time to this. So I have to make it worth my while. So if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right so that I can start to see something come back. And that's not necessarily for a selfish means, but it's more so for it's kind of equal exchange. If I'm going to do this,
mind, truthfully.
yeah. If I'm going to put up, 6 hours of content that took me 12 hours to film. I want something back. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly. No,
And so does my fiance.
100% agree. Yeah, no, I agree. And really, that's kind of where I'm coming down to with the Misfits is it's like we're trying to. I have so many different branches that I've worked in the TTRPG community, and my passion is the group of people that I've developed this amazing project with. And for the longest time, I was doing the pro gaming. I'm still doing the pro gaming to a point. It's not paying the bills. It's nothing crazy, but it is. It helps fund the project. And then Twitch is kicking off, and we're doing these things with amazing creators like yourself and the other people that have been on the show. And you're right. It is one of those things where sooner or later you have to look at it and you go, okay, what is 90% of my time being taken to, and is that being lucrative, or am I wasting my time and need to look at it a different way?
Right.
Right.
So yeah, so I'm kind of in that period of building that.
Yeah, which that period's fun, but it can be extremely stressful and rough at times. So, for any of our new audience that are walking around in the channel or in the chat room, just a heads up, we spoke about Alex's character, Agron, and just because I see a bunch of new people in here, I'm going to post up the tip jar again. So the tip jar is specifically for our wonderful artist who's in chat right now, Brina. If we raise $25, then we're going to create Agron, and at the end of the channel, we're going to drop the G Drive link, and then as soon as she gets that created, we're going to chop that up in there. So, it looks like you have a guest in here who found out.
Yes, who knows Agron? Who knows who Agron is? Yes, Emerald. Yeah.
So hopefully, like I said, hopefully we get to see what this character looks like. It sounds like we won't see them in their prime, but we are going to see a version of Agron that seems really exciting to listen to find out about. And then, of course, if this thing really kicks off, and I will let the audience know, if this thing really kicks off, what we'll do is we'll raise our, we'll add a tier level in Patreon, where not only will we bring Agron to life in artwork, we'll bring an entire character sheet where we'll get a hold of the guest and we'll actually build the full character out for you. So, but that's only if we see the interest kicking off. The interest isn't kicking off. I'm not going to push the extra against the bar for stuff like that. But yeah, let me see here. What other things can we talk about? Audience, if you have questions, you can throw them out as well. How's your new show? Talk about your new show that you've been running. Because I know you're GMing over on your Twitch
on the World's Guild. Yeah.
On the World's Guild.
So I run a main campaign over there called Legacy. And Legacy is essentially the second show of a series. My first show I ever did was like the first season, sort of. And it's going well.
Yeah.
The things I've learned, because I've been a part of a dozen of these streams and these shows and worked on them, and
right.
What I've been trying to do with this, and then what I'm doing in the future, because I have 5 shows basically planned to begin filming and then begin, editing and all that stuff to then be put up in the new year. But the main thing I learned from it is it's the ability to let go of any plans, but also make sure that my sessions don't go over a certain time limit. Like I always try to keep my players working towards a specific goal, and then the session's done. Right. Because I used to let my sessions roll for like 5 hours, 6 hours, and
people don't have the bandwidth.
Nope. Nope.
As we're jumping in, and we got a couple questions, and this question I like. So, from the Emerald 97, it says, "So my friend's birthday is coming up, and he forever GM. And I want to do a one-shot for his birthday. Got any advice for someone with 0 DM experience?"
Steal everything you can from DMs you like. If they're your friend's a DM, I know you watch our shows, you're in there. Like, if there are things you've seen, take them. Don't be afraid to steal something from somebody else. If you saw an encounter you liked, if you saw a character they liked, if there was a way they ran their sessions that you enjoyed and you don't feel comfortable coming up with your own process, just steal it. Just take it. You know what I mean? And if it's your first time doing it, have a little bit more structure, but remember to be flexible. That's what I would say.
Also remember it's a one shot, so
Yeah.
having a goal at the end is just, and then drive towards that goal.
Right.
But I also think if you've got a forever GM and you come in and you say, "Hey, I want to run a game for you," they're going
to be so happy.
They're going to be so happy. They're not going to run off and do their own thing. They're going to be excited to see what story you come to, or you bring to the table. So I really think if you just say, "Hey, I want to run a one shot for you for your birthday," they're going to be all smiles at this point, and they're not going to even think of anything else other than the fact that you are taking the time and energy to create that memory. So that's my own extra advice to that is just go do it. I think your GM is going to be ecstatic because I love it when my players come to me and they're like, "Hey man, you've been running this thing for months and months and months. I got this really cool idea I want to run. You know what? You go for it, man." I never get to play, especially when we get one shots from other audiences and other streams. It's so fun to jump into their world and bring a character there and just see what happens, right? So, second question: what is the first character you played that you fell in love with, and what was it about the character that brought them to life to you? Coming from our artist.
The first character that I played that I fell in love with, I would say it's a character that I still play to this day, Valerian Rezana. He is a high elf, and it started. I created this character for a villain. It started as a villain campaign, and so he was essentially like evil Tony Stark, right? Okay. Right. But that's not why I fell. That's not why I fell in love with the character. It was when our DM allowed us to kind of make a sharp left turn and go a little bit more like we saved somebody, and just exploring a character that starts, I love exploring character arcs. And so I really enjoyed taking a character that was like a pretty bad person and like what would make them kind of swing, not completely to, good and holy, but to kind of that more gray area. And I also just liked, because normally I'm not, but I enjoyed being the smartest guy in the room because that high intelligence score was great.
Hey, you do what you got to do. That's what I say.
Right.
Stuff like that, because if you're building a character for a specific reason, you might as well use that in the case as well. So, but no, I agree. That's definitely sounds like an interesting character. So as you develop this, so what was the first arc then that really got you connected to the character? Can you give a little bit of a background on what happened?
Without having to give a novel of the sessions that led before it.
Yeah.
I would say it was seeing the consequences of his actions. Okay. So he had done a lot of bad things, and inadvertently it had hurt a person he cared about. So basically dealing with the consequence of his actions was kind of the beginning of that. Because before it was, everybody, they're just faceless people that he, would use or, do whatever he needed to do. But it affected like one of the very few people that he cared about. So then that was kind of the swing, or let the swing go.
Yeah, saw where everything piled back in, and then now this character has such a deep history and a deep backstory that it can't do anything else but fall in love with it at that point, right? So
right.
Yeah, no, I like the redemption arc. I really think it's an interesting thing. I also think it's really fun having a player who brings a redemption arc because it gives the game master so many tools to sprinkle back into the story. You don't have to pull teeth to try to figure out how to add things in. You can just bring in little things. It doesn't have to be the entirety of everybody that they've made enemies with, but sprinkling that one or two characters that you run past and it's like, oh, I remember I did this to this person, and then it blows up into a whole new.
Oh, I'm still paying for stuff I did in the early sessions.
So how long have you been playing this character then?
I've been playing Valerian for 2 years now. Yeah.
2-year campaign. And what level is Valerian?
17.
Okay.
17.
So,
yeah, we're getting up there.
Yeah, you're getting up there. So I don't get a lot of chances to play those high levels. So how does that feel to you? I mean, if you've got a group of 17 level characters, things have got to be pretty intense.
Yeah, it's basically like every combat, it either goes one of two ways. That like we just stomp it and it's done over with in moments, or we're fighting for our lives like nobody's business. There really is no in between. There's no easy middle ground because we've got a wizard who's level 17, so they're basically a god at that point. You know, I'm a paladin, so I have a health pool that will not decrease.
Doesn't end. Yeah, it doesn't end.
You know, we've got a sharpshooter who's just taking out any of the enemy casters. We've got a warlock. Like we've got pretty much all the bases covered. So the DM really needs to throw the book at us to like get us to sweat a little bit, right?
And how many of the characters? How many characters do you have in that party right now? Is it just 4?
We just added a cleric not too long ago, so there's 5 now. Yeah, so now we have a cleric, so we really ain't going anywhere.
Yeah, you ain't going anywhere anytime soon. So, have you ever given a character a voice you ended up regretting or changing?
All the time. All the time.
I was like, all the game time. Master every week.
Every time, because I have this. For some reason, just in the back of my mind, my default like voice for a random person is like New York Italian, and I hate it. I hate that I do it. It's like they're like, I want to go talk to him, and I'm like, hey, how you doing? And like I hate it, but it's like my gut reaction. So I end up changing that slowly over time, so the party doesn't notice because I also forgot what they sounded like. So
right. Yeah, nice thing about when you record things, you can go back and go, okay, this is what I sounded like. Cool, that makes my life easier.
Right.
But yeah, no, I agree. It's like same thing as like, you know, every dwarf kind of has an Irish accent sometimes because it's all I can do. You know, I'm not a voice actor in any way, shape, or form. I wish I was. It'd be really cool. I'm looking into what voice acting classes cost and all that stuff. It's a little pricey, but
you get what you pay for, though. So
you do exactly, and that's the thing is anything that would improve that skill, especially on a stream and things like that, would be fantastic. So yeah, no, for Shadow, that's kind of a normal for most GMs, I think, is I don't know how many characters I've built a character and I'm like, that's bad.
I'm like, that voice isn't good. I'm gonna get rid of that.
Yep. I like the fact though that your instant is that Italian like New York style,
and I'm Polish, so like it doesn't even make sense.
Like you're in Milwaukee, like
right?
No.
We're German and Polish, so we're gonna watch the Packers and the Bears, and we're gonna have some beer. Like that's what we sound like here,
right? That's a funny accent to play too.
That's my entire family. They all sound like that.
Your entire family, they all sound like that.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Oh, did you have some Polish sausage? That's the, yeah.
Sounds like you have a very large range of voice as well. Like your highs and lows can get pretty extensive, which is helpful. Especially for somebody like me who has a lower voice on a normal basis, and then trying to play, a lady character or an older character. Sometimes it's very hard for me to get that higher pitch. But I think with some training that would be easier.
Just move the position of the sound in your face.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like if it's, depending on where you want it to be or like where you're speaking from too.
Yeah.
But also, my players, they thirst over anybody. So if my lady that I've just introduced has like a smoky, husky voice, they don't care.
Smoky husky voice, they don't care. So that's awesome. Anybody else have any other questions? And while we're doing that, we're just about 9:40 and about 9:35 right now. So we're gonna start rolling into what I think is part three of our show, and that is the roll for inspiration. Now, roll for inspiration can go quite long or it can go quite short. It really just depends on what we get into conversation with. But is there a favorite book, TV show, movie, one of each you're welcome to, that really brings inspiration to you as either a creator, as a dungeon master, or as a player?
I would say, I like personally, I my advice to Emerald is like steal everything. So that's what I do. I like, yank stuff from every piece of media and I dress it up in D&D and I throw it out there. But so as far as like what inspires my content, it's pretty much most things I consume. You know, I'll be watching. Before I ran a one shot a few weeks ago, I watched the original like 80s version of The Thing. And then that was the monster essentially for the next one shot. You know, that was the one shot as they were in an outpost and there was the thing. But as far as like actual inspiration for like the type of worlds I like to build, I would like look at like SAO and Dot Hack, like all of those like VR anime. I pull a lot of inspiration from, and then specifically a book, The Wizard of Earthsea. Pull a lot of inspiration from there as well. That's what I would say.
Yeah, see, The Wizard of Earthsea.
Earthsea, yeah.
Look at it. So this is where I get my own.
Your own reading list.
Yeah, my own reading list. It really is. You know, I've been diving into Tolkien for the last 2 months because we're preparing for our show starting on Sunday with within the One Ring RPG, which I'm ready for it. I'm not at the same time because the story, or not the story, but the elements of how the game is played is so much different than a high fantasy D&D game. So a lot of ideas is coming up with fun adventures that aren't combat related, because you got to think everything's gritty in Lord of the Rings.
Right.
It's not, you got to go all the way to the highest elf in order to get healed for, a couple points of health, these types of things, where, a paladin goes, at level 1 and he heals you. So
it's very different. So you can't just take an 8-hour nap and recover from getting your arm chopped off.
Exactly. It just doesn't work. So would you recommend, then what would be your favorite book then? I'm guessing
it would be Wizard of Earthsea. Wizard of Earthsea, yeah. That is my favorite.
And then TV show, I'm guessing Dot Hack Sign or
favorite. Like my favorite anime is Sword Art Online. So I would say that. Otherwise, my favorite shows change constantly.
Okay.
Yeah, it constantly changes.
Do you have a favorite movie?
Jurassic Park.
There we go.
Jurassic Park.
So, and you've already answered our second question, which is how do you harness your inspiration? And it's consuming media, right? It's what you gather. So this is a fun question. And I got in this role for inspiration, before I say that I came up with this, I did not. A good friend of mine, Dan, over at the Fairy Fire podcast, came up with this, and we talked about utilizing it on the show. And I came up with some questions, and this one I really like is who is your current tabletop superstar or somebody in the industry that you look up to?
Oh, there's so many.
I guess the question would be why.
I would. I'm gonna pick two specific people. I'm gonna pick Critical Bard and Cadiosaurus.
Okay.
So there are two people who I had as players on one of my shows, and they I not only respect the grind, like they are content creators full time through and through, and they've given me a lot of advice on a lot of things, but they know who they are and like how they present themselves to the community. You know what I mean? There's like it.
Yeah.
What they say is what they believe, and what they do is what they believe in. They always
there's no sugarcoating. They push their whatever their respectful thoughts are on things. They just open it up to people.
Right. Also, they're fantastic role players, fantastic content creators. So
some of the makeup Critical Bard can do is incredible.
It's insane. It's insane.
Like, oh my goodness. I've been following Critical Bard since before he started moving on to the Realmsmith cast. And man, some of those, the face paint.
Yeah,
Jesus.
They're insane.
Crazy.
Yeah, so those two, are two people that I kind of look up to in the industry.
Katie Soros a lot. I've heard the name quite a few times, but nothing direct. I've been over the last couple of weeks though. I've heard her name multiple times. I'm like, okay, I need to go check out and see who this person is.
Yeah, I think she's on the Dungeon Run right now. Actually,
okay.
I think she's on their new show, but she's fantastic, great educator, great content creator. So yeah, Critical Bard and Katie Soros are the two people in the industry that I look up to.
Yep. So this is my own personal, because I'm curious to ask people this, is now that you've been on the show, who would you recommend me asking as a guest for the show that you think would also enjoy doing this?
Again, so many.
So many.
I would say a creator by the name of Hama Sama Kun. I could text it to you over Discord.
Yeah, definitely.
Hama Sama Kun. I'll type it out to you in Discord here.
What are they doing in the TTRPG community right now?
So they presently are running a show called Hot Asian D&D, and it's an entire Asian cast of players in an Asian inspired world that Chris has crafted and created. So it's a really fun show to watch. It's a really like kind of kooky, crazy adventures, but it's a really cool show. And Chris is Hama-sama-kun, and he does fantastic work. He makes really funny, goofy videos on YouTube, playing D&D with Cards Against Humanity. It's wild. So I would recommend reaching out to Hama-sama-kun. They're fantastic.
Yeah, will do. Definitely. And then what is your number one practical tip for a new game master?
My number one tip, if I have to pick one, would be learn about the people playing at your table. Because there is no better way that you can craft a story than learning about the people that are playing in that story. You know what I mean? It's if you have no idea and you're just kind of going because it's a pro DM, well, ask some questions before the game. Get to know the people at your table, see what they like, see what they don't like, and it's going to make them enjoy what you present to them a lot more because you can tailor it more to them. It's just get to know your people. Get to know your people.
And then what would be your number one practical tip for a player, a new player?
For a player, share the spotlight, but don't be afraid to take it. It's a community game, so you can't be the only one all the time doing all the stuff. But if you're not the one who normally takes a spotlight, don't be afraid to grab your character's moment if it's there, or if the DM is offering something to you, don't be afraid. Take it.
Awesome. No, I agree. That's a great one. I don't think I've heard that from anybody else I've had on the show. Is not just don't take a spotlight all the time, but at the same time, when you have the opportunity or when your GM presents the opportunity, don't be afraid not to as well. I really like that. And then, of course, the next question, and I think we've somewhat talked about, is what's next? What is the next few months or year look like for you?
So it's going to be pretty busy. So as I said, I am currently working on 5 shows that essentially are all different tales within my homebrew world that will be pre-recorded and put up on YouTube starting in the new year. And then in December, I'm going to PAX. I'm going to be on a all Bards panel ran by Critical Bard. So that I'm excited for that. And then in April, I will be on D20 cruise, which is basically with event cruises. It's a huge cruise line. It's a floating convention. I'll be running games on there. And then I'll be heading to Evermore in May for Quincy's event happening at Evermore out in Utah during May.
Right.
So it's going to be busy, and that's just content creation. That's not my job. I travel around the United States competing, so that's what I'll also be doing.
Well, if you're ever here on the East Coast, let me know where you're at, because I'll see if I can come, watch a show or whatnot and watch you compete and that kind of thing.
Is it April? April, I'll be in I'll be in Boston, I think. We have one of our nationals in Boston.
So that's where we're at right now. So
okay,
but yeah, no, that's exciting. Those are some amazing events. And how cool is it to say that in the next, or let's say the last 5 years, the TTRPG community has went from just playing in a game room somewhere to hosting these amazing opportunities,
right?
Like, cruise ships and Evermore, which to me is like living in D&D. Like, it's incredible. I've seen so many videos and pictures. That sounds so much fun. There's a part of me that's like, can I make that? Between that one, there's another one called a fantasy ball that I know from friends of ours that's from the community are going into.
Talking to her, the Katie, who's in charge of that, would also be a good one, because she's awesome. She's got like the fantasy ball planned out through like 2026. It's wild.
That's insane.
Yeah.
No, I have to submit my. I've been slowing down on it. So I was offered to submit my DM's package for the D20 cruise, and I felt like I wasn't a good enough game master yet. And I was like, man, I should do this, and I keep slacking on it. I need to do it. Hopefully they still have openings. That'd be amazing to hang out with you and all the other creators and stuff like that at the D&D cruise. So. All right. Well, if we don't have any other questions, audience, it was a blast. We got to learn a little bit about Agron, who apparently has a huge history. Sadly, our first adventure, we did not. I don't believe we made our goal. Let me look. Let's see here. Is on the goal list.
Any advice for voicing? See that in the chat.
Yes, I see that from one of our very own regulars, Shadow, he's a content creator as well. So,
for voicing characters, I would say personally is I have taglines in my head when I need to switch voices. That are very indicative of the accent that I need to do. Like for New York, can I swear on this show?
Yeah.
Okay. Before I do this, for New York Italian, it's fuck you. I go fuck you, and then I'm there. Then I'm in the voice. For Scottish, it's a great day for motor car racing, and then you're there. So I get these phrases that are very like close to the accent, or that I can like do the accent on, and I learn how to do the voice from there. And so if you ever watch one of my streams and I'm kind of whispering to myself for a second, it's probably because I'm going to talk in an accent. And I'm trying to find the right voice line.
Right.
But that's what I learned in voice class when I was in acting school, was like we had these taglines to do.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing, because I never thought that was a way to do it, but that seems like a very easy opportunity to be able to get that out easily without having too much of a stress on coming up with that.
Right.
So.
And also, if you're really interested in language, learn the phonetic alphabet. Because then you can look up the phonetics of words and like how different accents use phonetics, and then you can it's kind of like math but for words, and figure out how to put the sounds together if you want to practice an accent.
Nice. Phonetic alphabets. You find catchphrases that'll help you get into the accent. Those are some really good tips. Much better tips than I can give you for voice acting. I have no acting experience whatsoever.
I paid for an expensive piece of paper that told me.
Paid for an expensive piece of paper that taught me how to do that.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no. Thanks again, Alec, for coming.
Thanks for having me.
We did have somebody anonymously donate the $25, so Agron will be created.
Awesome.
So, don't know who did it. Somebody did it, and I'll be getting this channel this show over to Brina so she can listen to the first portion of the show, take her inspirations from it, and then of course we're going to create that for all of our guests here. There's a drive-through RPG. Nope, rephrase. There's a Google Drive link in the channel that if you can save to your stuff, here in about a week or so, give or take, our artist will be producing it and tossing that up in the drive there, and you'll have a portrait of Agron. And then of course we'll send you a direct portrait for yourself to share with your friends. And then from there is, every week we're going to continue to add those for people to access. And then once it's taken off of Twitch, we'll remove that link from Google Drive, and then we'll move it straight to the Patreon at that point. And there'll be an archived group of all the wonderful guests. But Alec, it has been a blast. It sounds like an amazing year coming up for you, and I hope all of the best for you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for bringing an amazing community that have been very chatty and very talkative, which is great. And next week
they've behaved, so that's good.
Yeah, everybody's behaved tonight. Some days I get really rowdy groups. Some days I get very calm ones. Okay, kind of a mixture, but everybody was talkative, which is great. So for our next week, we have another one. He goes by the name NPC Voices. He is a
nice
voice actor, and I think he has. I think I've talked to him through D&D, but I know he does TikTok, and he does voices from villain characters and does these little skits that are fantastic. So we'll be going more into voice acting and how to create characters, and let's find out who he brings to the tavern and the story he leads on. But until then, tonight the tavern is closed, the lights are being dimmed, and we call our show to an end. Thank you once again for having us, for coming to hang out with us, and we will see you guys all next week for another episode of Tavern Talks. Good night.